Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your evangelist of the imagination, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, I am Robcasting at you. You members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity. This is Robservations episode number 648. Robservations is, of course, the show about something. And I'll tell you, one of the somethings that this show is all about is hopefully inspiring the next generation of imagination connoisseurs, or at least inspiring their parents to forge their offspring into the next generation of imagination connoisseurs. And let me tell you, there's nothing I like better than evidence of that. So we have an imagination connoisseur here, Mr. Jack Wallace. He is a fantastic leather worksman. I guess I always forget the blacksmith. I wouldn't call it that. But he is a man who is a wizard with leather. He has a son Aiden. And Aiden, as we've featured on the show before, Aiden is a burgeoning photographer, and I dare say he's going to soon be a filmmaker as well. Aiden sent me a package. Now, in this package, I want to say that Jack did include some leather hair berets, and the girls that live in the house with me, my girlfriend and her daughters, absconded with them. They disappeared in seconds. But they were beautiful leather pieces that work with I'm not a girl, so I don't, you put a piece of wood in, it's like a big hair clip. They're amazing. They're amazing. And if you have a lady that likes these kinds of things and they're beautiful, all I know is that these three girls, they were gone, man. I blinked and they were gone. But in this package, I got something from Aiden. Now, we've celebrated Aiden's birthday before. I owe Aiden I have a huge package I'm going to eventually send out of stuff that he's going to like. So anyway, Aiden, now remember, we're talking a new generation of imagination connoisseur. Aiden sent me a letter. Dear RMB, thank you for making me feel special on my birthday. Aiden Wallace. Well, let me just say, Aiden, I should be making you feel special on every day. Now, so he included this letter, but what he also included, and I feel very privileged and honored that he did this, Aiden has sent me some of his work that I will be putting up in the observatory, or the Robservatory, I should say. And these are photographs Aiden has taken with his action figure collection, and he framed them for me. Now, I think I've shown maybe one of these on the show before, but the first is the Predator. Now, Aiden, correct me if I'm wrong, you're 9 now? Look at this. Look at Aiden. This is Aiden's work. There is a Predator in his, hunting, apparently hunting humans. This is in the woods, and here is the Predator. And as all good budding imagination connoisseurs should do, you have to make your work, you have to use fire. And this is amazing. And Aiden, obviously, he signed these to me. There's his name down there. So this is his work. This is Aiden's work. A predator hunting, and a predator, he's either causing this fire to happen or somebody just shot him to try and take him out. I would say this is amazing work, Aiden. This is incredible work, but that is not... the Predator is cool. But Predator came out in 1987, way before Aiden was even born. But Aiden, he remains topical. Now look at this. The Mandalorian. Here we have the Mandalorian. How cool is this picture? Look at that. That's amazing. And here's the Mandalorian getting busy. This is I love this photo. Look at this. How badass is this? I don't know what scale these are. Maybe they're Black Series figures, which would make them 1/12 scale. But this is some great stuff. And I want to thank Aiden for getting these photos printed for me and putting them out in frames. I think what's really exciting about this is, it's one thing to have action figures, but to take them out and utilize your creativity. I mean, there's some really interesting... Aiden's basically, he's being a film director. Even though these are still frames, he's taking out his cast, in this case his action figures. He's setting up shots. He's seeing what these shots look like in his mind, and he's getting the perfect shot and the perfect angle down. I mean, Aiden is an artist. He's a filmmaker. I wouldn't be surprised if in 20 years you'll be hearing from Aiden Wallace, probably even sooner. He'll probably end up being, I don't know, directing on whatever Disney Plus Star Wars show is being made in 20 years. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Aiden Wallace doing that, directing. Aiden, I want to say, keep up the good work. I love seeing these. I will go, actually I have, you can't see it now, but there's a place on the wall that I'm going to hang these so I can always see them. And they will be in a prized position in the Robservatory. And I will, in fact, I'll send you a picture when I have it up. And you've inspired me. Maybe I should take some of my action figures out and do some photography with them. I think that would be great. But I want to thank you as a new imagination connoisseur, a young imagination connoisseur. This is just the very beginning of your creative journey. Your father, he's an amazing creator himself. So remember, the sky's the limit, Aiden. You can do whatever you want. You're doing some great work here. I'd continue to do it. And I'm really excited to see what you're going to do next. Fantastic. So well done, sir. Well done. And good father. Good parenting, Jack. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle being kind souls, from all of you, or to all of you, across the 28 known galaxies, Snyder Cut's out. And I'll tell you, the reviews are wildly divergent from the fan community. There's no doubt that it's definitely a singular vision. And I was talking to Cal earlier from Swag Props on our the channel member Zoom call, which was great. It was our biggest one yet. Thanks for everybody for participating in that call. But what was interesting was Cal, who you know as Swag Props, Cal said something really interesting. Like, he was not necessarily a fan of Snyder's vision of the characters, but based on something I had said and other people have said, I'm not the first person to make this, but the idea that we talked about the fact that Snyder's vision of the DC universe is that these characters truly are gods from Olympus. I mean, that's kind of how it all works. And I think if you go in, and Cal made an observation that was pretty interesting. He said, when you see Superman in Man of Steel, he's always like, when he shows up, he's floating. And when he was saying this, I was fixated on the fact that the scene when they first take Superman in to interrogate him, and he's walking down the corridor in his handcuffs, he's not floating. And they've really brought him down to the ground. And I've always liked that image of him walking cuffed, because he's just doing that because he's trying to put their minds at ease. He's like, yep, you can put cuffs on me and I'll walk down. And indeed, I will put up with this interrogation to show you that I am no threat to you and I understand where you're coming from. But I always liked that because it's all on his part. He's just doing it to make anybody feel better. So even the act of Kal-El, a newly minted Man of Steel, walking down the corridor in his handcuffs, it shows that he's being considerate of his fellow travelers on the planet Earth. He's trying to put them at ease, not knowing the man in charge is actually John Jones. But okay, pretty interesting. And I've always liked that. And maybe that's why I have enjoyed Zack Snyder's, his Man of Steel trilogy. The Man of Steel trilogy being, of course, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and now Zack Snyder's Justice League. It feels like a full trilogy. And while it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, or a number of cliffhangers, it now feels of a piece. We have the life, death, and rebirth of Superman. And now I think that Superman now exists in Zack Snyder's universe. It's a different timeline, but there was no Superman yet. I mean, even though Dawn of Justice was called Batman v Superman, Superman was still feeling his way out through the world, and he wasn't fully realized. In a way, he was kind of like Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars trilogy. Not till the end of Return of the Jedi is Luke a real Jedi. And I think by the end of Zack Snyder's Superman, Superman is finally Superman. And at least that's the way I saw it. And Cal was saying, now that I'm looking at these characters as the gods of Olympus, and then people pointed out, well, what about Batman? And I'm like, Batman's the only man on Earth that can climb to the top of Mount Olympus where the gods reside. I'm speaking, of course, metaphorically. And that's what's going on there, because obviously he has no powers, but he's the only person on Earth that has the wherewithal. I mean, as far as human beings go, Bruce Wayne is at the top because of his wealth and his intelligence, and he's the best of the best, even though he's haunted and a murderer and a vigilante and all that. But he's also the only man that has the wherewithal to climb to the top of Mount Olympus to confront the gods. And I think that's really interesting. And that's how when I say that Zack Snyder's Justice League is fucking metal, man, when I mean that in the way that it's gods and monsters, and it is. I mean, look, man, you gotta love a movie that inserts Ares and Zeus in the battling the original Darkseid invasion of the Earth and the rest of the minions from Apocalypse. The idea that he would include those characters should tell you all you really need to know. And of course, Ares being the villain from Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman, obviously these gods still exist. The pantheon of the gods of Olympus are real. They do exist in Zack Snyder's Justice League, as did the Green Lantern Corps thousands of years ago, which also makes sense. And all of that world building to me is, again, it was like when I first started reading Justice League, the same thing that Gail Simone was talking about. When you first read a Justice League comic when you were a kid, especially back in the 70s, it all felt so important. It all felt so mythic. And I think that's where Zack Snyder is coming from. Whereas the Marvel Cinematic Universe is entirely different. You've got the regular men that are being elevated to supermen and women. And in the case of the DC EU, your main characters are sort of born into this. You're an alien immigrant, so you're born with limitless superpowers. You're an Amazonian, the daughter of the gods. You're the Martian Manhunter, last son of Mars. So it's a different vibe. It's a whole different thing, which is why I think I like Zack Snyder's Justice League so much, just because it was very, very mythic, and I enjoyed that. So there was an article today that I quite enjoyed, and it was dropped. It was written by Graham McMillan, and it was in the Heat Vision section, which is basically the genre section of the Hollywood Reporter, that I thought was interesting. And of course, you know me, when I find interesting articles, I like to share them. So here's this article that I read, Why Superman's Justice League Return Matters, and it was published today at 10:45 by Graham McMillan. Zack Snyder cements the controversial 1992 Death of Superman storyline as much a part of the mythos as the hero being rocketed from the planet Krypton as a baby. When Superman died at the end of 2016's Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, it's an event that redefines the world in which the movies take place, meaning that by the time he returns in Justice League, it's an even bigger moment. As Zack Snyder's Justice League expands upon that moment to meet the director's original vision, it's worth wondering what the new vision of the movie means for the Superman story as a whole. When Superman died in 1992, the final part of Doomsday, it was a big deal. Superman number 75 was the top-selling comic of the year, selling over 6 million copies. Many of them a deluxe edition that came sealed in a plastic bag and accompanied by a special poster and a commemorative armband featuring a tasteful version of the Superman S logo made out of dripping blood. It was the 90s. Things were different back then. I have a number of those still in the poly bag. It was also just the beginning of the story. Doomsday was the opening salvo in a trilogy of stories that continued with Funeral for a Friend and ended in the epic 6-month-long Reign of Superman saga. Actually, Reign of the Superman saga, in which Superman returned from the dead eventually. It didn't happen immediately, which was part of the point. Reign played with expectations before it ultimately fulfilled them, challenging fans to find their own interpretation of Superman along the way via 4 pretenders to the title. One of them was Steel, which they actually made into a movie. If you haven't seen Steel, oh boy, do yourself a favor and seek it out. Yes, Warner Brothers made one of the characters of Reign of the Superman into a movie. While Justice League is far from an adaptation of Reign of the Superman in either of its incarnations, sadly, audiences will have to wait for an unspecified time for the opportunity to see the Eradicator or Cyborg Superman on screen. The Snyder Cut has some interesting echoes of the comic book resurrection of the hero that speaks to the curious fidelity that Zack Snyder's DC projects have to their source material. For example, Justice League makes a point of ensuring that Superman comes back wrong. This plays out differently from the comic book storyline, but feels very much as if it's melding 2 different elements of the source. That the cinematic Superman is more of a threat than expected in the immediate wake of his rebirth, perhaps owes something to the bait and switch at the heart of Reign, where the most likely candidate of the 4 pretenders to the super throne turns out to be the villain all along. When he does actually return from the dead, Superman is weaker than ever, and far from the Man of Steel fans had come to expect. The Snyder Cut Superman at least looks like he did in the comics, in costuming terms, if nothing else. No super mullet for us, unfortunately, which again feels entirely in line with what audiences have come to expect from Snyder's DC movies. They fixate on specific surface details and play with the thematic elements of the material they draw on, but in other respects stray wildly and occasionally outright contradict the comics they're based on. Think of Man of Steel's father-centric focus, which paralleled the influence on the character from the then DC CCO Jeff Johns, but also the climactic murder of Zod, which felt so at odds with most interpretations of Superman that many fans are still upset about 8 years later. Even those breaks from tradition prove to be important in the grander scheme of things. Even the upset fans matter because the conversations further define the shape of the Superman myth outside of the strict history as presented in the comic book canon of the moment. Is Superman a killer? Of course not, but perhaps there's a story as to why not that includes Zod's murder. That was comic canon for a while as well, after all. Yet, surely Snyder's version of fidelity is preferable to what happened in the theatrical cut of the movie, in which Superman's resurrection is essentially reduced to a MacGuffin that feels as if it's a video game level that needs to be unlocked before play can continue. Superman flies off to another part of the movie after the scene, allowing the main narrative to go on without him and leaving the viewer wondering what the point was for the next half hour or so. By creating a death and resurrection narrative in Batman v Superman and his version of Justice League, Snyder has arguably cemented the 1990s comic storyline as an integral part of the Superman mythos, ensuring that the character dying at the hands of a wordless monster called Doomsday and coming back a changed man, and one more appreciated by the world at large for that matter, is as much a part of the Superman story as being rocketed from the planet Krypton as a baby or wearing a big red cape and coming from Kansas. So there is that article. And I kind of liked the idea that this article is dealing with the fact that Zack Snyder's Superman is incorporating a number of Superman storylines, obviously the Doomsday storyline in the death of Superman and the reign of the Superman and Funeral for a Friend, bringing them back and cementing the idea of the black suit, cementing the idea of the resurrection, and making that as much a part of the main Superman mythos that people remember as any other. Now, there's a lot of controversy that I've read over the last couple of days where people are demanding, fans want to know, why does Superman come back in a black suit? Why? Where does that come from? Why, as opposed to the red and blue and, well, not yellow, but the red and blue traditional suit that Superman's wearing. Now, in my own mind, I will give you my own canonical explanation as to why there's a black suit. For whatever reason, because they bring him back inside the Zod's Kryptonian ship, for whatever reason, that's the kind of uniform that the Kryptonian ship just makes. It's a black suit. Now, because it's Superman, maybe the House of El, whatever, obviously we've seen how intelligent and intuitive Kryptonian technology is. I think they could either register the fact that the Codex was inside of him or whatever else, and the Kryptonian technology gave him a suit like anything else. What I thought was really interesting, when I was working on Superman Returns, obviously they were leaning heavily into the idea that this crystalline technology that Richard Donner's Superman sort of introduced into the mythos. Superman, through his shard that created, of course, the Fortress of Solitude, that became a big deal. The crystals were always a big deal, but they brought them back in Superman Returns because it was sort of a direct sequel or continuation of the Donner film. And I remember talking to Brian once about how Superman's costume, the uniform he wears, would actually be crystalline. It would be grown. That's where those costumes came from eventually. Maybe Martha Kent made one, but later, when once the Fortress of Solitude existed, and that's how his cape and, for instance, his costume was able to withstand things like atmospheric reentry. And they didn't really ever get into that, and it's not really necessarily presented in the film. But I always liked that idea. I'm like, that makes sense to me. I really wish that they had dealt with some of that. How that crystalline technology definitely applied, and I think obviously just the way that the suit looks, Zack Snyder's vision of the character, Superman looks all the way back to Man of Steel. That the same thing applies. That the costume is a product of Kryptonian technology, which I really like that. And I think that it's really interesting because the black suit absolutely comes from the Reign of the Superman storyline when Superman comes back. It's a badass, like in the comic it was, obviously it was related more to simply to death. But if you look at Zod's forces that were clad in black, it makes sense that in terms of the Kryptonian technology and everything, black just happened to be a color of these uniforms. And that's kind of the way I think about it, is that it's almost Kryptonian military issue in a way. And of course the technology recognizes that Superman is part of the House of El, because why wouldn't it? Doing a genetic test, you would know that the bloodlines of Krypton would be easily identifiable and part of probably a big part of Kryptonian culture. So I love the idea that, and look, we saw this before. This is nothing new, but there's a lot of people, I've just been seeing it. Why the black suit? What does it mean? Where did it come from? I don't understand. They didn't offer a canonical explanation for it. And for me, it's just something I would infer that that's the case. That the reason that he is in the black suit is because the Kryptonian technology that brought him back made that suit for whatever reason, created that suit for him as par for the course, even though that isn't really addressed as an issue. But I do think that more so than ever, because they lean into that, and I think it's much more satisfying in the Snyder Cut seeing the actual black suit in action, even though we know that, of course, the color was desaturated and things like that to make it look that way. But I do like the black suit because in the mythos, that black suit becomes even more Kryptonian and more iconic as far as Snyder's universe is concerned. And like what Cal was saying, the idea that these are gods, these characters are descend from, in the Superman's case, literally descend from, figuratively, the Mount Olympus that is Krypton, it makes sense. And I really like that. And I thought that this article pointing out that the Death of Superman storyline, which I have the graphic novel right over there, it's fun to have that. I mean, I was obviously buying comics. That was a big deal. And I really loved the reign of, it was pulpy, but I really liked the reign of the Superman storyline And I was reading it religiously when it came out. I mean, it was like WandaVision. It was very intriguing. Every issue, you're like, wait a minute, what's really going on here, and what's happening, and who's who, and what's what, and which one of these is really Superman. I mean, even though I was a little bit older, reading that storyline, I was hooked. I was intrigued. It was a lot of fun. I loved it, and I like that this article pointed out that the Snyder Cut really brings home these elements and makes Superman's death and resurrection a big part of the mythos, and certainly writ large on the big and small screen. So kind of what I was thinking about today. Thought I would share that article with you because I thought it was a good one. And let me tell you, I have a lot of articles and letters to read, not articles, letters to read to you. So I think I'd start with James Rudge. James Rudge has written me a letter. James Rudge says, "Hello, Rob. It's been a while since my last letter. Today, I just want to share my thoughts on Zack Snyder's Justice League in as short a letter as possible. There will be no spoilers of the movie in this letter. This movie was everything I wanted from, and what we should have gotten in 2017's Justice League. You are right, Rob. It was fucking metal. Throughout watching this 4-hour epic, I felt as if Zack Snyder himself knew what I wanted for an epic fantasy story and gave it to us. That's another way to watch these things. I think that Zack Snyder's Man of Steel trilogy is, in fact, an epic fantasy trilogy about the gods of Olympus, in a way, our new gods of Olympus. And if you look at it that way, maybe your opinion will be changed like Cal's was. I love Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. The Ultimate Edition is the definitive version of the movie in my eyes. And just like you, I found the theatrical cut of Justice League to be the most disappointing movie I've ever seen. I could rip into that cut and Joss Whedon and his questionable choices, but I won't. I'd rather embrace the love I have for Snyder's Justice League than the hate I have for Whedon's. That's all I have to say about it. I loved it as a movie, a symbol of fandom uniting to get it released, and a studio allowing a man whom I respect have his authorship preserved in metal epicness. Yes. It says that, metal epicness. I have doubts that #restore the Snyderverse will work, but let's just say that I have faith that anything is possible in a universe where the Snyder Cut was completed and released. Thank you for the great content you always put out, Rob, and I look forward to your future episodes of Robservations. Sincerely, James Rudge." Well, James, thanks for writing in. I appreciate that. Thanks for the kind words. Look, I agree. I mean, look, there's a lot of people that I've seen leveling criticism at this movie, and by the way, they're mostly people I knew were going to level criticism at this movie. And yes, is the slow motion egregious? Yes. Even though they're playing, as I said, Song of the Siren during the Flash sequence when he's rescuing Iris West, and that, to me, that was interminable, but I loved listening to the music, so I understood what they were saying. And yeah, is it a little creepy that he's caressing her face and all that? Yeah, I suppose you could look at it that way too, but I thought it was quite a beautiful sentiment. And again, while it goes on forever, just like the singing, and someone pointed out to me, if you're from a town, a small town in whether it was in Greenland or Iceland, or it must have been in Greenland, or maybe even northern Canada somewhere on the coast, and a remote town like that, and you have literally a god of the sea walking amongst you, why wouldn't you sing him a hymn when he goes away again? That's true. It just adds to the whole mythic feel. You kind of have to put yourself in that mindset. We're so used to being... that was another thing. This completely subverts the normal action pacing we expect. So I was there for it. I enjoyed it. I loved it. And do I think it's perfect? Sure, no. But I appreciate it for what it is, because it's one man's singular vision and it will never be mistaken for anything but that. And I think there's something to be said for that. If somebody can leave that indelible of a mark so you know that person's work, how many people can say that about their art? And I think it's all right. So I enjoyed it. And thank you for writing in the letter. This one comes from Paul Gilmore. Hey, Rob, first off, I was originally going to send this in as a chat, but the more I kept writing, the longer it became. So I sent you a letter instead. I wanted to share with you in the Post-Geek singularity this odd, perplexing, confusing interaction I had yesterday. A friend of mine texted me saying, I don't get what the big deal with the Justice League is. It's the exact same movie. There's no difference. I asked him if he's watching the correct version on HBO Max. He replied, no, I'm watching the Amazon Prime version. I corrected him, telling him it's on HBO Max, which I know he does have, and it's vastly different. It's 4 hours long, and it's titled Zack Snyder's Justice League. He responded with, well, I think I'll just stick with the Amazon version. After reading this, my eyes almost bugged out of my head, and I fell out of my chair. I wanted to beg him just to watch Snyder's cut instead, but I figured, what's the point? It's a losing battle. This just reminded me, this is how the general public feels. And we, the Post-Geek Singularity, are just a small bubble. And how we tend to think of this kind of stuff, such as the Snyder Cut, as common knowledge when it's really not. It also reminded me of the Star Wars sequels. While we all cringed in disbelief of what we saw in 7, 8, 9, the general public liked them. In fact, I know many who love them and found nothing wrong with Luke's storyline or how Palpatine just shows up out of nowhere and summons thousands of Star Destroyers from the ground with crews on board. So wait, how long were they just sitting underground waiting to be summoned up? I could go on, but again, the general public liked or loved them because they just saw each movie as 2 hours of fantasy that took them out of the real world. In the end, it saddened my heart that late afternoon, talking with my friend and him just deciding to stick with the 2017 crap fest of a movie Justice League was and doesn't even give Snyder's Cut a second thought. But sadly, again, that's just how the general public thinks, or at least most of them think. Thanks for reading this letter. What are your thoughts on this? Paul. Well, Paul, you have isolated and clearly defined something I think we all as fans need to remember. We represent only a very small portion of the general public. And, you know, when I would go to science fiction conventions, the first time I ever heard this, I didn't understand, but I started to hear people being called mundanes. Mundanes. Now people say normies. But back in the day, when I was a young whippersnapper and I would go and I was a whippersnapper and go to conventions, I used to hear the word mundane. At first I didn't know what it meant. Mundanes. Like, isn't to be mundane, isn't that something that's sort of ordinary? But what are mundanes, as if that was a noun? And then I found out it was. Mundanes were people. They were people like me and people like you. They were everyday people. They weren't fans. They didn't understand. And what was interesting was the way science fiction fans would bandy about that term. And these were very literary skewing conventions. So it wasn't just media. It wasn't just television and movies. A lot of these conventions had a heavy literary component. And so the idea of being a mundane came out of the fact that these people didn't read science fiction. So they didn't know. They were not, and the implication was they were not enlightened beings. Like if you didn't read science fiction fantasy, it's mostly science fiction fantasy, you weren't as smart or as insightful as somebody who did. And it was a derogatory term directed at, we're looking down from our high horse of genre awareness. And I have to tell you, I still, maybe it's a shortcoming of mine, but I still feel that way. As a film fan, as a fan of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, I even look down on my fellow fans sometimes when I'm trying to have discussions with people. I'm like, what do you mean you haven't seen fill-in-the-blank movie here? What do you mean you don't know so-and-so's work? I try and be all bright and cheery on the outside, but inside I'm seething with, judgment. I try not to do that. No, I'm just kidding. I don't do that much. But the idea that somehow, we are part of a club. And I think I learned when I used to go home to Seattle a lot more, and I would see friends. And when I first started working at Warner Brothers, after I'd lived in California for a year, I'm like, hey, guess what? I'm working at Warner Brothers Studios. I go home to Seattle. My friend's like, cool, we're going to go snowboarding or skiing? I skied. And they didn't care. You know, my whole life I wanted to work in the film business, and I was working at Warner Brothers at a major motion picture studio for the senior vice president of physical production. I mean, I thought I was like the shit. Well, there's nothing like leaving Los Angeles and going back to your hometown where nobody really cares about what you do. They care about seeing you. Like, hey, man, let's go skiing, or let's go to a movie, or let's go to the Pike Place Market. Let's go get a few drinks, shoot the shit. People are like, great, you're working at Warner Brothers. You like it? Yeah, terrific. That's it. I mean, now more people are media savvy, so you get questions. I mean, people would ask, well, did you meet any movie stars, man? I mean, I wasn't going to say, like, pretty much every day I'm on a set with their movie stars, because that's all anybody cares about, is if a movie star, and people think of movie stars as gods of Olympus, you know? If you meet a movie star, especially if you've been on a movie set, you quickly realize movie stars are shocking people. Just people. You know, I've even heard movie stars say funny things like, hey, I got to go take a dump. Can you tell the first AD? Yeah, I can. Or I have to take a wee. Movie stars are just people. I know when you get out of the movie business, they still have the air of godhood amongst everyone else. That's the only time anybody cares. Have you met such and such? Did you talk to so-and-so? You say that's universal. People would be like, oh, really? They love that. But when you tell them you work in the film business, or that you've directed, or you're editing movies, people are like, oh, that's cool. Is that fun? Do you like that? Or what's it like to edit? That's about all, because people they tune out. But movie stars, people they've seen parading across their screens, they're interested. So I realized that most people are mundanes or normies. We're the ones that are different. Our arguing about Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker or any of that stuff, nobody cares. I mean, we care, but don't get me wrong. I'll never give it up. I'm never going to give it up. I'm just not going to. I mean, I'll be railing about Star Trek till I'm sure that in my last moments of life, I'll be railing about Star Trek Discovery. Those turbo lifts. Or something like that. It's going to happen. I know it. But yes, point well taken. Most people don't care. They watch entertainment for entertainment's sake. They do not puzzle over it the way we do. They want to be entertained for 2 hours, and it's like, oh, that's pretty good. It can get annoying, but so what are you going to do? But you got to remember that, and I think we all have to remember that. So all the vitriol online, like when everybody's talking about Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm and Cara Dune and Gina Carano and all this stuff, well then, you got to remember that the regular, the 9-to-5ers, if we don't, normies, whatever you want to call them, they just don't care as much as we do. And by the way, that doesn't make them worse than us. It just makes them doing other things. They do other things. So, but still, always something good to remember. Always something good to remember. This one comes from Edgar Stiltner Jr. Hi, Rob. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I just finished watching the Snyder Cut. Though I do not plan to throw off this mortal coil anytime soon, I couldn't help but think, as the credits scrolled by, well, now I can die a happy man. I suspect you know what I mean. Best regards. They called me Fast Eddie. Well, Edgar, they called you Fast Eddie as in Felsen. Do you know what the color of money is? Are you a hustler? Edgar, I do know. I want to thank you writing in for that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I do. I get it. How often do you get a movie like the Snyder Cut? I mean, that's not many, maybe only once. And so I'm all for it. I'm with you 100%. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I'm there for it, as I know you, in fact, are. You are, too. This one comes from Pookie Poo. Pookie Poo is written in again. Pookie Poo. Hi, Rob. In my last letter, you mentioned that Return of the Jedi was the most disappointing movie you've ever seen in theaters. Today, I want to talk about the most disappointing movie I've ever seen in theaters. Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. I remember how excited I was to see the X-Wings and Stormtroopers and all the cool planets from the original. However, when the movie began, I felt a disturbance in the Force. Why was Qui-Gon Jinn Obi-Wan's master and not Yoda like we were told in the original trilogy? I tried to keep an open mind, but as the movie continued, I began to get bored of the world building and politics. I wanted to see TIE fighters go, not trade disputes. However, something happened that made me have a flicker of hope. Our characters went to Tatooine. This was my favorite part of the movie because Tatooine was in the original trilogy. The pod race scene was pretty cool, but it wasn't as interesting as the trench run from the original trilogy. When the main characters arrived on Coruscant, I found myself falling asleep. Why would I want to see the capital of the Republic, a metropolitan planet? A setting that adds to the lore? No thanks, I want to see Hoth or Endor. Eventually, the characters came back to Naboo, a planet that I didn't like because it's not in the originals. When the final battle began, my blood boiled. Why were droids doing the fighting instead of stormtroopers? Why were the bad guys using tanks instead of walkers? Why were the Naboo using Naboo fighters instead of X-Wings? This wasn't Star Wars. It was new, and it was strange. Even the final duel felt off. Why were the Jedi and Maul doing so many flips and fighting like badass warriors instead of hitting each other like old men with canes? There wasn't any verisimilitude. Sure, Duel of the Fates was great, but I much preferred the Imperial March because it was in the original trilogy. The Phantom Menace made me begin to suspect that George had lost his talent. Attack of the Clones confirmed my suspicion, and Revenge of the Sith did nothing to change it. Honestly, while the new trilogy isn't great, at least it feels like Star Wars. It has X-Wings and Stormtroopers. What more could Star Wars fans ask for? Well, I think they could have asked for the sequel trilogy to be good. But I understand what you're saying. Pookie Poo. I was tremendously let down by The Phantom Menace. And I think what's really frustrating about a lot of our franchises, and we've talked about it on the show so many times, is that if you're a fan and you're steeped in the lore and you've read the EU and you've read comics and all that and you've watched all the animated shows, hell, you've seen all of the Ewoks or Droids animated series, the thing that we have in our minds is things that we want to see. And things like, for instance, during The Phantom Menace, the thing that was most interesting to me is we get to see Jedi at the height of their powers. Jedi that are really exactly how we've always wanted to see them, but never had. Now, I thought Phantom Menace really, here's something that's really always bothered me about the Phantom Menace. Star Wars literally opens with the crawl, you pan down, and you see the Rebel blockade runner being chased by a Star Destroyer, lasers blazing. Both ships have guns blazing back at one another. The Rebel blockade runner gets trapped, overrun, pulled into the hangar deck or the bay of the Star Destroyer, and the Imperial officers board the Star Destroyer, and the firefight that was outside the ship continues inside the ship. It's an action scene. Well, Phantom Menace begins with, we're meeting some Jedi. They're going to do some badass shit. And what happens? They literally are walked into a room and they get to sit down and they talk. I mean, yeah, we see them fight pretty incompetent battle droids. Those are pretty cool, but all of it seemed so not very, let's call it cinematic. And I think in our minds, we're like, any one of us watching Phantom Menace could have been like, well, I have a better idea for this scene. I thought, like, if I had pitched Phantom Menace, I've said this before, I would have said Phantom Menace should have been like Lethal Weapon. The movie should have been two Jedi, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and they're doing some Jedi stuff. Like, for instance, I would think they put an end to a civil war. Like, we see the last battle of a civil war, and these Jedi come down, and they're there to end the war. a destructive conflict of some kind, and they use their powers. They kick ass. They make it to the control room of something like a Bond movie. It's a huge, awesome action Star Wars set piece, kind of like from the original Clone Wars series. The Gennady Tarkovsky. I think it's something like that. However you pronounce his name, you know what I mean. The first Clone Wars animated series that's coming to Disney Plus, which I loved. And you'd see Jedi do cool Jedi shit in that. It was awesome. I want to see that in live action. We didn't quite get that. And then, I mean, they do fight robots, but it's not droids. It's not that interesting. And I agree. I think The Phantom Menace is it's a strange... I've often said the prequel trilogy are bad movies, but good Star Wars. But when I say good Star Wars, I mean adding to the lore, and you find all this interesting stuff out. But the way the stories are told, it's just not that interesting. You know, there's a lot of filler, and my friend Mary Forrest said that the prequel trilogy is all about landing gear. Landing gear. And she's right. She was right. You watch that. I mean, it's almost like this fetishistic attachment to watching the landing gear ships come out before they land. She was absolutely right about that. And I think that the prequel trilogy is like that. And I can understand. You're watching this stuff, and it is very goofy and weird and strange, and it's nothing like what we were expecting. And I do think it is the product of George Lucas losing touch with humanity. It is a movie where he was so enamored of his own technology and putting stuff together. I mean, they were taking 3 or 4 takes and combining them in one take I can take his head off this take and put him on this take. It was just, it was soulless. The new Star Wars movies feel soulless. Sometimes look, how do you get a bad performance from Sam Jackson? Well, I love Sam Jackson, and I just think that his character in the prequel trilogy it does not kick ass, and he does not kick ass. Do you believe it's this boy? Like, dude. And I think we all know. I would like to have. I liked all those characters, and you kind of wonder. One of the things I often thought was kind of bizarre is, to me, the Jedi. I always thought the Jedi looked like Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi, the black outfit. Why? And the robes that Obi-Wan was wearing was because he was a desert dweller. And the idea that they're leaning into the way Obi-Wan Kenobi looked in the original Star Wars, that's what the Jedi are wearing? Why would you wear robes if you were a Jedi? I understand they're mystical, but the Jedi are peace officers, basically. Why wouldn't you look more like Luke did at the end of Jedi, having like a sleek outfit where it'll allow you movement? I mean, even when they fight in Phantom Menace, they're wearing these cloaks that they have to take off and like leave on the ground. Oh, don't forget your cloak after the fight's over. It's just, there were so many decisions that were odd. Why do droids have to use goggles, binoculars? Wouldn't their ocular implants just zoom in? Wouldn't they be built in? Like, there's just so many weird things about the prequel trilogy. But yes, I agree with you. It was not very good. I didn't love it. Didn't love it. Although I have to say this. I have much more affection for it now. Like, I don't understand. I dare say, I here's a hot take. Attack of the Clones might be my favorite of the prequels. I don't understand why people hate Attack of the Clones so much. I love the end on Geonosis with the Battle of all the Jedis. I love that. I think it's awesome. I love it. But, I know everyone... Revenge of the Sith has the most story beats that are relevant to the rest of the Star Wars universe, so I get that. But, yeah. Tom Jr. Jackson's here. Tom Jr. Jackson writes in and says, "Hello, Rob. Let's talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League. This film was beyond fucking metal. It was heavy motherfucking metal. Yeah! Heavy motherfucking metal. I love the entire film from soup to nuts. If anything, I'm a film fan, and I got that from my dad. I would have watched this film if it was 6 hours long, too. Now, while Joss Whedon's version was tacky and had some weird Frankenstein mishmash to it, and one got one chuckle out of it, Zack Snyder being able to finish this film was pure enjoyment. I laughed, I was moved, I cheered at scenes. Watching this film made me wish my dad was watching it with me. If anything, he loved his superhero films, and even though it's been 11 years since he's passed away, not a day goes by when a film comes out that I don't wish he was watching whatever film, that I wish he was watching whatever film with me. Spoiler alert, the use of Kevin Costner and Russell Crowe in the film made me rear up or tear up to a point where I was amazed, as always, how someone can write dialogue that is able to move me. The scenes with Diane Lane and Amy Adams moved me as well. It was incredibly powerful moments along with Cyborg and his dad. Some of the flow of the film made me wonder if while Snyder was finishing it, the theme and idea of if I could have just another scene with my daughter or loved one was in his mind. Because that theme was very much flowing through the film, and it made me say to myself, wow, this is deep and beautiful. I also caught that the cop that Lois was bringing the coffee to was none other than Mark McClure, 1978's Jimmy Olsen. I don't know if anyone caught it, but to me that made me say, fuck yeah, honor Donner. I got the context of where Affleck's Batman's Nightmare was based on. When I saw you were not able to watch the film when you wanted to, I felt bad because I wanted to send a tweet saying, this was fucking metal. Send tweet. Now, coming away from watching this film, it made me sad that there would not be a sequel. I really wanted to see where this would have gone. Now, was I excited to watch this? Yes. Did I go into it with expectations? No. And I'll tell you why. Because I love movies and I just wanted to enjoy it and have a good time. I'm sure the people at Warner Brothers are seeing how people like this film and are saying to themselves, oh, I fucked up. I fucked up. I hope some of them are saying that because we all had a dream and wanted something, and they listened and they probably went into it kicking and screaming. Well, Rob, I thank you for letting me chat about the Snyder Cut, and to be honest, I don't know how I've written this letter because I'm still tired from staying up and watching the Snyder Cut and then the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Recommendation for the 666 playlist, 2 George Harrison songs, Devil's Radio and Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. As always, Tom Jr. Jackson. Well, thanks, Tom. What a great letter. It's interesting. I think the jury is still out. Remember, all we're hearing from now about the Snyder Cut is our community. To go back to another letter, we're going to see, right now everyone's excited and elated, and it's fun to see, and obviously it is metal, and it's all great, but it don't mean shit if, in fact, it does not translate to either subscribers or viewers to HBO Max. Did people sign up? Did it do its job? Did the $70+ million it took to make this a reality, will that pay off and translate in subscribers to HBO Max? That is, let's be clear, the only litmus test as to whether this was a success or not is if HBO Max feels that the subscriptions they garnered and hopefully kept, if those subscriptions end up being, it doesn't translate into subscriptions and views. That's it. That's it. That's all that we can do. And we don't know. We're not going to know for a while whether that worked or not. So, yeah. Let's see. What do we got here? Oh, this is interesting. I don't know if I should read this. Should I read this letter? I don't know. I don't know if I should read it. I haven't read this letter yet, but I'm going to read it anyway. I'm just going to see where we're at here. This comes from anonymous letter in favor of the end of a war. That's what it starts. Hi, Rob. First, I would like to say that if you prefer or think that this text of mine is too long or does not suit your Robservations, do not read it in public, and I'll fully understand. Let's read it. Hi, Rob. This is a type of letter that I didn't want to write. That's why I did not put my name in it, although by email address, you'll know who I am. I didn't want to write this letter not only because I don't like to talk about politics, but also because I didn't want to talk about culture war and the logic of canceling people. Cancel culture. But I want to talk about cinema. All right. So about politics, I just have to say that it is unfortunate that people are increasingly falling into the radicalisms of the left or the right, and this is happening all over the world. Cultural war is a very important and serious issue. The aim of all wars is to win or destroy our enemies. In the case of cultural war, it is not only winning that arrives, it is also necessarily to destroy, burn, and finally erase or rewrite. What is happening in the United States is important, not least because everything that happens in the U.S. will also inevitably be reflected throughout the world. As an example, we're seeing more and more people in Europe, some with more responsibilities, saying that monuments, statues, or other symbols should be destroyed or removed to museums because they represent people or groups of people who've committed acts in the past that are considered incorrect or are unacceptable today. This idea is completely wrong because nobody will follow an idea or ideology by looking at a statue or a monument. On the contrary, whenever we contemplate them, we have an opportunity to reflect or exchange opinions with others about something that is, in the final analysis, a moment in our world history. We all know that tremendous injustices have been committed throughout history, and they continue to happen today. We also know that when we talk about historical figures, be they, for example, Julio Cesar Chavez or Alexander the Great, who had an immense impact on humanity, that not all of their actions were positive or on the contrary. So my opinion is that our history should never be erased, because when we do that, what happens is history repeats itself. I could have taken much worse examples, but I choose this one from Wikipedia. The Hollywood Blacklist was the colloquial term for what was in actuality a broader entertainment industry blacklist put in effect in the mid-20th century in the United States during the early years of the Cold War. The blacklist involved the practice of denying employment to entertainment industry professionals believed to be or to have been communists or communist sympathizers. Not just actors, but screenwriters, directors, musicians, and other American entertainment professionals were barred from work by the studios. This was usually just done on the basis of their membership in, alleged membership in, or even just sympathy with the Communist Party of the USA, or on the basis of their refusal to assist congressional investigations into the party's activities. Even during this period of its strictest enforcement, from the late 1940s to the late 1950s, the blacklist was rarely made explicit or easily verifiable, as it was the result of numerous individual decisions by the studios and was not the result of official legal action. Nevertheless, it quickly and directly damaged or ended the careers and income of scores of individuals working in the film industry. Finally, we come to the question of cancel culture. There is a war at the moment linked to the cultural and entertainment industries. Books, games, or even sports, films, they all have one thing in common: the fear of their creators of being canceled for issuing opinions or ideas inside or outside their works that may offend people. In front of this war, we have people like social justice warriors on the one side and people like the Fandom Menace YouTube channels on the other. Forgive me, but I don't know how to describe those belligerents better. The problem with wars is that when they start, their opponents do not hate each other at an early stage, but over time they will inevitably hate each other because terrible acts are committed in wars. This war may not kill people, at least I hope so, but it hurts many. Social justice warriors and the Fandom Menace are both warriors. They will fight each other and they will never be able to create the conditions for peace. I do not know what the consequences of this war may be, but it can contribute to worse things, one of which is already visible. Fear of exercising our freedom of expression and fear of being canceled, banned, excommunicated, of losing the ability to work and earn money to support our families. One of the problems of this war is that the battleground is the internet, where many lies and insults are written and told, and even in the media you can already see incorrect or biased news. Finally, I get to the point I wanted to reach. The live stream which was made to raise funds to fight suicide, in which Zack Snyder participated. This is a cause that says a lot to the director, and I think he also wanted to use this opportunity as a way to thank the fans for their support. Hashtag release the Snyder Cut. But the live stream had an incident. Zack Snyder was obliged by someone, I think from Warner Brothers, to make a previous statement which was said in a totally unfortunate way. Such a statement left the organizers from Geeks and Gamers in a difficult position, to which they reacted like gentlemen, because if they responded, they would undermine the main objective, which was to raise money for a good cause. UCHE already said later that he spoke with Zack Snyder and that he did not intend to add the fact that he was not connected to Geeks and Gamers to the message that he made about the incident where, unfortunately, Asian people died. I believe that Zack Snyder was forced to say what he said, otherwise his career could be over. Also, whoever forced him to say what he said would now probably also prohibit him from issuing a clarification on what he actually intended to say. Perhaps it would have been preferable for him not to enter the live stream, but honestly, it's difficult to know what would have been better to do, not least because we are talking about events that were not foreseen and that appeared at the last minute. Here's my word of praise for all of those connected to Geeks and Gamers. I know they are warriors, but here they acted well as people who are willing to understand and to dialogue. They contributed so that the sad war did not worsen even more. They chose peace. This incident divided the community, whether it would be that of Zack Snyder fans or that of the fandom Menace. I think that in the short term, Geeks and Gamers will be criticized by its allies and its enemies. They will be criticized by their allies because the words of Zack Snyder seem to imply that fans in general, or Geeks and Gamers in particular, are toxic, which in my opinion is a lie. And then it sucks to take the bad examples that may have been made by some individuals and to then associate that with any type of community. And this reasoning applies to both sides of the conflict. They will also be criticized by their enemies, who will take this opportunity to distort and lie about the situation. But in the long run, they will be praised for not having answered or questioned Zack Snyder about what he said at the beginning of the live stream. Again, that comes from anonymous letter in favor of the end of a war. Okay, a lot of people right now might be not understanding. I know a lot of people are, but a lot of people might not know what was meant by the letter that I just read. So, I believe it was Thursday, the day the Snyder Cut was available. Geeks and Gamers, Uche, who's a member of Geeks and Gamers, or affiliated with that channel, who's a very smart former football player, I think he played in the NFL, is a very smart guy. I really like him a lot. And he organized Zack Snyder coming on a stream to raise money for suicide awareness. And it was all done, of course. Zack Snyder's been making the rounds. He's been appearing on many different channels. You know, it's funny. I never even thought to ask to have him on this channel. I might have been able to come on. I don't know. Maybe I don't have enough subscribers. But everyone knows I was very much looking forward to this, so maybe I could have got him to come on to talk about it. I didn't reach out or I didn't try. But so he was going on this stream. At the beginning of the stream had been going on, they'd been raising a lot of money, and it was a Geeks and Gamers affiliated thing. I don't know. You can read all about it. You can go see. Many videos have been made about it. A lot of people on a lot of different channels. Who I stream with, made a pretty good video that I really liked. So what ended up happening was that when Zack Snyder first came on the stream, he clearly was looked a little scatterbrained, and I figured I didn't know this happened until after the fact, but I went back and watched it all. So when he came on the stream, he mentioned that, look, he was upset that the Geeks and Gamers logo was on the donations page for the charity. And he said that had been spoken about. Then he went on to say, obviously, the terrible events in Atlanta where a male suspect went and attacked 3 different spas, killing a number of people, including Asian women. Zack Snyder has Asian daughters. Also, his daughter Autumn was Asian, I believe. And Zack Snyder came out and said, "Listen, I just want to start by saying we let's hope that," he first mentions Geeks and Gamers and didn't want to have that affiliation on the channel. or on the donation page or something, and that he didn't believe in hate and let's not talk about. Anyway, whatever he said, it was clumsy. It was very clumsy, and clearly he was tired. He was also agitated, and it pained him when I watched this. I'm like, he really didn't want to deal with this. Zack Snyder has been dealing with all of these fans. He's been doing a wonderful job servicing the entire film pundit community. I wasn't even going to talk about this. Everybody's been asking me about this and to weigh in on this because it was very interesting to contrast that. I had been on a stream raising money for Latino theater that Latino Slant had put together under the Midnight's Edge umbrella. Andre and Tom and Latino Slant put together our Blood In, Blood Out reunion that they graciously at the last minute asked me to moderate. And I was able to get director Taylor Hackford, to come in. And Taylor Hackford suggested we get Jimmy Santiago Baca, the famous poet, to come in because he had written a lot of the material for the screenplay for Blood In, Blood Out. And that was Taylor Hackford's decision. And Latino Slant was able to reach out to Jimmy Santiago Baca. I figured I shouldn't be the one to do it. He should do it. And he did. And it was an incredible stream. If you're a fan of the movie Blood In, Blood Out, I thought the Midnight's Edge stream we did was amazing. So I hadn't heard about what was going on with the Zack Snyder stream because I was doing my own stream for charity with another Fandom Menace channel that I've frequently been on, and I like everybody there very much. We have a good rapport. So the situation went down, and of course there was a lot of fallout. Zack stayed on the stream, but it was certainly a gut punch to the entire Geeks and Gamers channel, and specifically Jeremy. Jeremy, it's his channel, it's his brand, and I have been on the Geeks and Gamers channel before. I've streamed with Jeremy. I've also been on with many of the Geeks and Gamers people. We were on Star Wars Theories channel talking and raised a lot of money for charity there. So there's a lot of goodness that goes along with the Geeks and Gamers channel. They've done a lot of good stuff for charity. Here's what I thought. Here's my feeling about this whole situation. Everyone needs to be self-aware enough to know, you really have to know what you are peddling. Like, my position on this channel is to try and be as positive as possible. I know I might rub some people the wrong way. There's people that think a lot of things about me, but I at least understand my position as far as this milieu exists. And as far as Geeks and Gamers, and Jeremy knows he's a firebrand. I've been on when we were on with the Amazing Lucas, and he came on, and he and the Amazing Lucas, I wasn't aware that they had this beef, but they played it up a little bit, but they have a thing. And when Jeremy comes on, he knows. He's very aware. He's very self-aware of what he's doing, and they're very aware of the things they say. It's not like they pretend they don't say it. They own it. Jeremy owns it. I think what happened in this particular instance is that Zack Snyder probably set this up as all cool. Somebody or many people started coming at him going, "Why are you going on Geeks and Gamers? Do you know what they're a hate channel and all this?" And I could tell that he'd been contacted. He was trying to, and after what happened I'm sure somebody brought up, how can you advocate being on do you know what they said about Kelly Marie Tran? I mean, there was probably so many things that were in Zack's ear and out the other, and he's just thinking to himself, I'm just here. I was Uche, and I'm here they're raising money for this great cause. I'm here to do that and talk about the movie, and we're supposed to be enjoying ourselves. And now you are telling me these voices, and I don't know who they were, Warner Brothers publicity, friends of his, I have no idea. But Zack is trying to deal with all this stuff, and I would say Zack Snyder, it was clumsily handled. He was conflating things, and I think, everybody at Geeks and Gamers who couldn't have been more excited about this. They were there to support this thing, and I can only imagine, I mean, it would have been a gut punch to anybody, to have this great moment. Zack Snyder's coming on your channel, and I understand what that was like, man. And because I've been on channels with Jeremy where we've raised tens of thousands of dollars for good causes, like on Star Wars Theories channel. So I understand, man, it was a gut punch. But on the other hand, I would say that as clumsy as it was, I think Zack Snyder was playing last minute reaction. I think the way to have dealt with it, if I had dealt with it, I would have tried to understand, because you've got to be self-aware and know what your channel is. They know. Jeremy knows. It sucked. It really, really sucked what happened. But I would have stood down on that. And I would have just said, you know what? Happy that you're here, and de-escalated the situation and not take it personally. I know a lot of people, but Rob, how can you not take it personally? Well, because, I mean, we're out on the internet. Like, I wouldn't expect, if I were to get like Alex Kurtzman to come on this channel, you know, and if Alex Kurtzman had said the same thing, said, well, you know, Rob, you're a hateful fuckhead asshole about everything you say about my work, and yet I'm coming here to talk to you about Strange New Worlds or whatever. I would say, Alex, you're absolutely right. And I understand, but having you here, I'm not going to take it personally. You are here. That's enough. And I have said things. I hate your show. I think you've ruined, and everything you've touched, and all the people that you've worked with regarding Star Trek since 2009, hate it all. Terrible. And you're never going to get me to change my mind. However, the fact that you're going to come on this channel and I can speak with you, I appreciate that. And I'd love to have a conversation with you, and I promise I will be polite. I will not say anything disparaging while you were here, because I'm disparaging your work, not necessarily you personally. And let's talk Star Trek. I would have to know that, you know, you'd have to say that. And I think that it was clear to me, that Zack Snyder was given some advice. He didn't quite know how to process it. He was embarrassed. The last thing he wanted to do was sully this whole thing. And he didn't, you know, and I'm sure from a father's perspective, you now have Asian Americans being fucking murdered at their place of business. So he had that going on in his mind. He's thinking about his daughter, Autumn. He's thinking about promoting this movie. It finally had come out after this ordeal. So my whole thing was, did it suck all the way around? Yes. It sucked for Geeks and Gamers. It sucked for Zack Snyder. It sucked for everybody. And I think the equal suckage, because there's a lot of good people at Geeks and Gamers, and a lot of those channels, a lot of the people I've streamed with, I really like them. You know, and whether you like Jeremy or you like Geeks and Gamers or hate him with a passion of burning suns, he's got a lot of people that work for him and with him, and he's put together a channel. He's built it up. You might not like his brand of commentary, but so you don't have to watch it. And you might say that, does his opinion contribute? Is there toxicity in the world? Yes, but there's toxicity everywhere. He also turns around and streams for Geeks and Gamers. I mean, he streams for charity, and he is self-aware, and he'll even be self-deprecating. Now, am I defending any? I'm not defending anyone's behavior. I'm not condoning it. I'm not refuting it. I'm not doing any of these things. I am not my brother's keeper. You know, I let people do what they want. People have said to me, why do you go on these channels? Does that mean you're endorsing them? No, I'm not endorsing them. I don't think by going on to someone's channel I'm necessarily endorsing them. What I am doing is I'm showing that a person that I'm streaming with that might be diametrically opposed to me politically, we can have a good conversation. We can have common ground. And I think my whole desire to stream with all kinds of people is to show that we can do that with everybody. We can find common ground. Look, am I going to look to find common ground with somebody I believe is a Jew-hating Nazi? No, I'm not going to. I'd be like, I mean, I'll talk to them and I'll tell them what a fuckhead they are. You know, am I going to go on a channel with people that are known haters of the LGBTQ community or people that I think are real transphobes that have a real hatred. No, I'm not going to go on those channels. But if I have differing political ideology or something, and I feel that by having a conversation with somebody that I'm ideologically opposed to, if I know we can have a good conversation, then that's worth doing. That's my philosophy about that. But I don't, it is not a tacit endorsement of anyone just because I go on their channel. But I do think that nobody should be painted with that kind of a brush. And for all the things that people might hate Jeremy, and I might disagree with a lot of things that they say, but I've also seen a lot of the people from Geeks and Gamers do some incredible shit. And they've raised money, and they've helped people, and they do what they can. Having an opinion about movies or television, as toxic as you think that opinion might be, when the same people turn around and raise money for good charities, you've got to look at that too. And I don't think that's me fence sitting. After all, we're fans talking about ultimately entertainment at the end of the day. So I think it was a bad situation all the way around. I felt bad for Jeremy, and I felt bad for Zack Snyder, because somebody whispered if no one had come at Zack Snyder and just let it happen, they would have raised money for charity. Zack would have had a good time. There would have been no blowback and all that. It was someone else who got involved at the last minute or did some shit and said, wait a minute, do you know about this? And threw Zack off. And he's like, well, wait a minute. We've been putting this together for a long time. I promised these people I'm not going to back out. So he didn't back out, but he tried to appease everyone, and you can't. So anyway, that's kind of what that's my take on the whole situation. It sucked all the way around. And unfortunately, like Uche, that set up that it was done with the best of intentions, and they still raised a lot of money for charity. And you got to give it up for everybody that was involved, including Geeks and Gamers, for making that happen. And you got to give it up for Zack Snyder for coming on, sticking to his guns and going on. He could have capitulated to what was obvious pressure on his part and not done the stream at all. So I think ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it was a win-win ultimately for the charity that will benefit from the stream and for all the fans that stuck it out and donated money to a good cause. And I think at the end of the day, these are the moments that people need to stop and think for a minute. Rather than draw battle lines and go after people, it's clear you have to understand. You have to look between the lines at what really happened here. And I think what really happened here was there was outside forces on Zack's part that were conspiring unfairly, I think, as to what was going on. If they had just let it happen the way it was going to happen, nothing would have come of it. It would have gone off. Money would have been raised for charity. Everything would have been cool. And, rather than butt into other people's business, why not let things happen the way they were supposed to? But that's my thoughts. Those are my thoughts. So there you go. And again, I wasn't going to talk about this, but a lot of people have asked me to talk about it because I kind of wasn't paying much attention when it was going down. But, yeah. So that's kind of what I thought. Michael Haley, I think it's Haley, Halley, writes in and says, Rob, I recently discovered your YouTube channel, and I'm enjoying it very much. I was blown away by WandaVision and just started The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, hereafter known as The Adventures of Sam and Bucky. And I had a revelation during Bucky's therapy session and wondered if you think it might be valid. Bucky is Angel. Both, through no fault of their own, had their soul ripped from them. Angel from Buffy's Angel. Had their soul ripped from them, after which they spent several lifetimes committing unspeakable acts of murder and mayhem. Then their soul was restored, leaving them with severe guilt, no friends, and are now desperately trying to atone for their sins by fighting the forces of evil while attempting to reconnect to a world that has passed them by. What say you? Will Sam be Bucky's Buffy? Not as a love interest, but as a guiding light that shows him a path to redemption. Mike, what a great letter. I love that analogy. I mean, maybe making an analogy to Joss Whedon again is not the best thing, but I loved Buffy and Angel, and I know exactly what you're saying. I think you're very astute. I think that's exactly what's going to happen, and I think that Bucky might have a few things to teach Sam, too. I think that's going to be part of what's going on, but definitely redemption is a part of Sam and Bucky's character arcs, I think, here. And I think that that's exactly, Bucky has had his soul ripped out from him. Every time he was unfrozen, it was another lifetime, another generation. He went out to kill people, and they put him back in their old freezerino, as they said in Alien. And I think you're exactly right about that. 100%. 100% right. Very astute observation, by the way. This one comes from AJ Vargas. Greetings, RMB. I'm really enjoying your daily Robservations show on YouTube. I'm especially interested when you talk about your time at Warner Brothers. It would be great if you can do a whole episode on your experiences there from the day you started to the day you left. I'm sure you have a lot of fascinating stories to tell about it. And that comes from AJ Vargas. Yeah, I mean, I've told so many different Warner Brothers stories on the show. But, you know, for the most part, it was mundane, but it was mundane for me. I'm working on the Warner Brothers lot. And there were a lot of stories that I have, but I can't think of one off the top of my head, because it wasn't like someplace that had, it was all par for the course. You know, like it was just very strange. Like my boss, Bill Young, like at night, I would have to go when his assistant Nancy left. At night, I would come in and sit and man the phones until Bill left. Because usually studio executives, when the business closed, like agencies and stuff close at like, okay, here's a game. Here's if you ever work in the entertainment business, here's a game people in the entertainment business play. The agents, the managers, the lawyers, or whatever. So you get 100 phone calls a day, literally 100 phone calls a day. You got a phone list, and you try and return calls. You want to return everybody's calls to show that you've returned the calls, even if you don't necessarily want to talk to the people. So there's a lot of phone calls that get returned after hours. You know, you call them when you know people aren't going to be in, especially studio executives are like gone. They're usually gone, or they'll stick around or whatever, but it's a game. You call people when you know they're not going to be in, so you've returned their calls, and you can say, I return your call, even though the business at hand was not done. And it's just something that, but anyway, I would be brought in when Nancy would go home as assistant at 6, and I would just answer phone calls and take messages. And sometimes if Bill would stick around, I might tell him who's on the phone, and he might talk to them or not. So it was just a thing I would do every day. Well, like one day, Kevin Costner walks in. Just walks in. So it's just me and him. And I'm like, you know, Mr. Costner. And this was after Silverado, and it was like pre-Bodyguard, I think, something like that. But it was still Kevin Costner, and I was a huge fan of like Silverado, and I really liked. I don't know if No Way Out had come out yet or not. Maybe it had. But it was like, you know, Kevin Costner's there, and him and Bill were going to the LA boat show. That's the way I remember it. They're going to go look at boats. Yes, Kevin Costner has a life outside of Hollywood. But, you know, you would come in, and we would talk, because there's nobody in the office, and I'm not talking on the phone. So it was just me and Kevin Costner just shooting the shit. And those kinds of things would happen all the time. So they were very, like, I remember I ran into Mario Van Peebles, and Mario Van Peebles had directed New Jack City for Warner Brothers that had come out before I was working there, and he was in the office, and I was in the executive so we were in the executive wing, so we were surrounded by the studio vice presidents, and I had a little office. We had a little coffee room in our office. John Labib and I had an office behind the coffee room. It was a coffee nook. And we had a tiny little office. But we had an office in the executive branch, where everything happened. And you never knew. Like, I ran into Mario Van Peebles, and I told him, we talked about The Exterminator 2, and I said to him, listen, I got to tell you, I really loved the episode of Wise Guy that you directed when Vinny Terranova goes to Washington, D.C. I think your episode was called Day One. And he was like, wow, man, nobody nobody knows I directed an episode of Wise Guy. I go, well, I do. And so, he would sit there and we would talk. And, I'm 22, talking to these guys, that I've been watching. It was great. I mean, that's what it was to work. And this was on a daily occurrence, and it was funny because when you're working in Hollywood, there's no fans. In the executive branch, called the executive branch, the executive end, I mean, people say, I'm a big fan of your work, but they're not really fans. They're not nerds. Somehow they let a nerd in the gates, and that was me. I mean, I didn't look like a nerd, but I was at the time, I guess. Maybe I did. You'd have to decide. But that's what Warner Brothers was like for me. And I could tell stories like that. And to me, that might not be a great story for people, but the fact I could tell Mario Van Peebles I liked his episode of Wise Guy, to me, that's the whole story. There's nothing more than we talked for 5 minutes and he left. He went to, some other meeting. Maybe it was for Posse. I don't know, his next movie. But that's it was amazing. And you're on the Warner Brothers lot, and I was in and out of production offices and the sets. So, when Bonfire of the Vanities was being prepped, Brian De Palma was in his office every day. And his office was the first office when you went through the door. So I would come down. I'd have to go outside down because his offices where he was right by the Warner Brothers water tower, which is on Hollywood Way. So it's just past the water tower. So you'd go into his office and, he was there in that Brian De Palma jacket of his, and you'd walk by. And then there was Fred Caruso, who's producing Bonfire of the Vanities, who was awesome. I mean, he was a producer on Godfather 2. So, he was great. He talked to anybody. He loved talking to us. Any of the young kids, you kids. I mean, I remember he bought everybody bottles of amaretto for Christmas. But it was, look, I'm not going to lie. It was fantastic. It was a great job to have, even though I was just basically a PA. But you made of that job what you wanted to make of that job. So I have many stories to tell. So, yeah. Let's see what you guys are saying. What are you saying? What are you all saying? I don't even know. I have no idea because I haven't read what you're saying. Let's see what is going on now. You will take me to Jabba now. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. What are you guys saying? Checkmate 9 Moves sends in a tip and says, my review of the Snyder Cut, but done in feelings. Go to the gym. Play the guitar solo part of Coheed and Cambrus's Welcome Home, and then back squat 100% of your max. Pure epic metal! I get that. I understand exactly what you mean. That might be the best description of all. Play the guitar solo part of Coheed and Cambria's Welcome Home, and then back squat 100% of your max. Pure epic metal. I love that description. That's great. Dakota sends in a tip and says, let's have a little Mandela effect fun here. In The Empire Strikes Back is the line, Luke, I am your father, or no, I am your father. Since you've seen it 26 times in the theater, how well do you remember the line? The mind can play tricks on things. Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father. That's how it goes. Dakota says, would you like to see a Zack Snyder-style movie based on the Book of Enoch, involving the Watchers and their offspring, the Nephilim, giants facing off against mankind, where it was the Watchers that showed mankind technology and how to create weapons? Dakota, let me ask you. Reading that, wouldn't you want to see that movie? So yes, bring that shit on. Bring it on. Francisco Metalana became a member. Thank you, Francisco. I think you already had, but thank you again. Willow sends in a tip and says, I'm 2/3 of the way through the Snyder Cut right now. How long do you think the runtime would be if there weren't any slow motion? I feel like I'm slow-mo from Dread. Well, Willow, you know what? If there was no slow motion, it wouldn't be the Snyder Cut. You just got to go with that. You got to embrace it. Embrace it. But yeah, it would be probably a lot shorter. And I'm sure a lot of people would demand that it was shorter. And by the way, I think we only have to wait a week or 2 or 3 or wait until the physical media comes out, but we're going to get that cut of the Snyder Cut. We're going to get people cutting it down. And there's going to be people going, this is so much better. You wait, it's going to happen. No slow-mo, and they're going to cut it down. Duroc Media is here. I watched this Snyder Cut with my roomie yesterday. He's a big Marvel comic reader and had to educate him as to why the Snyder Cut exists or existed. Enjoyed the Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I need more. I do too, and you're going to get more. 5 more episodes. Glad to participate in the lovely community you host. I saw you. Did you pop into today's chat members Zoom call? I think I saw you, but you didn't say anything. You got to speak up next time. I'd love to talk to you, but thank you for supporting the channel, and I'm glad you dug it. What's not to love? Snyder Cut and Falcon and Winter Soldier. You get Marvel and DC. It's great. What a day. Alex Sarah sends in a super chat and says, I watched it. I enjoyed it. I like what they did with the League themselves, though the breakout star for me was Ray Fisher as Cyborg. For you, Rob, I got to tell you, as a team, see, here's the thing. I do not associate Cyborg with the Justice League. Cyborg, to me, is a creation of Marv Wolfman and George Perez, and he is a Teen Titan, as in the new Teen Titans. Starfire, Cyborg, Beast Boy, he's always been a Titan to me. And I know, was it New 52? They made Cyborg part of the Justice League. And I have to say, though, I loved seeing him. I love seeing his dad. I love seeing the way that they played him. I thought Ray Fisher did a great job. I really enjoyed all of that. But to me, he's always a Titan in my heart. But I thought Ray Fisher was great. I just love Ben Affleck as Batman. Any more Batman and Alfred, Jeremy Irons, I'm for all that. Bring that on. That's what I want more of. So, Checkers the Inventor said, I enjoyed how the Justice League seemed to get along from the start, more so in this version. It was refreshing. That's something not many people have mentioned. I feel that the same way. I feel exactly like you do. I thought it was much more... I like that. I don't like to see the Justice League at odds or like to not be there. And I wanted to see, I think, honest to God, I think Diana and Bruce Wayne should travel the world righting wrongs in their civilian garb. They never put on their costumes. Just Gal Gadot and Bruce Wayne, Diana and Bruce go around the world like heart to heart and fight crime or espionage or whatever, and they never don their costumes. I would be so into that. I think somebody should do a limited HBO Max series about that. I think that would be great. James Taylor says, hi, Rob. I just wanted to say sorry for not being around very much over the past couple weeks. I've been dealing with a personal loss and just needed time away. I'm very sorry to hear that you are dealing with a personal loss, but you don't ever have to apologize. This channel, you can come and go whenever you want. If you're a member of the Post-Geek Singularity, we'll always be here for you. I've still been watching, so I wanted to say thank you very much for helping me get through this. James, you're always welcome here. I'm sorry you had to go through a personal loss, but yes, hopefully we put some smiles back into you, or even when we didn't, we were here to offer you some kind of comfort. I'm glad to hear. When people say that, it makes me very happy to know that we're providing at least a place people can come and have a good time, even when things are bad. And I know you've seen fire and you've seen rain lately. So, by the way, I didn't mean to make a bad James Taylor joke at your expense, but I'm glad that you feel the way you do. Duroc Media says, glad to have watched your Zoom meeting today. Hope I have the time to catch them every time. Sweaty. Rock on, Rob, and fellow mods and friends. Well, Duroc Media, thank you so much. Thanks for supporting the channel. You are always welcome. You are the mods. Everyone's a sweaty here. We are all... it's funny. People have asked me why I don't take up the mantle or use the word sweaty. And for those of you who might not know, the great John Schnepp, who I was on Collider Heroes with for 3.5 years, he kind of coined that phrase, sweaty. And what it meant is, sweaty is what happens when you're at the San Diego Comic-Con or any con, crammed in to the dealer's room, and there's 1 million people there, and it's really hot. We all get sweaty. We get sweaty because we're there with our fellow fans. We're sweaty because we're excited to see the latest trailer for whatever movie's going to drop. We can't wait to get our latest comic book or whatever collectible we want. So he would call everybody fans sweaties. And people have always been like, Rob, are you ever going to say sweaty? I'm like, I can't do it, man. Sweaty was John Schnepp's thing. And for me, I love it when people say you're sweaties forever. I love it when people say it back to me. But I'm one. I am a lifelong sweaty. But I could never take that word away from John. It was his. Just like if I'm not here anymore, I would hope that people would say that I created the idea of the imagination connoisseur and the post-geek singularity. Although if people want to take up that mantle, that's fine. I just still think that it's important that his soul, may he rest in peace, he was the man who created the sweaties. Kevin sends in a super chat and says, hey, Rob, in your opinion, is the fight scene at the end of Man of Steel one of the best, if not the best fight scenes of all time? Oh, it's amazing. The battle between Zod and Kal-El at the end of Man of Steel, to me, it's one of the most amazing superhero fight sequences ever. Now, when you say fight scenes of all time, I mean, you have to qualify that by saying yes, it's visual effects and it's amazing. But in terms of other fight scenes, I go back to my beloved The Rad and The Rad 2, even radder, or as the mundanes would think, or they would understand, The Raid and The Raid 2 Barandal. I think those are some of the best fight scenes I've ever seen, to be honest. And and also in Ip Man, there's some great stuff. Ip Man, like I have to say man, like I can't say Ip Man. But yeah, but as far as superhero battles and all that, I think the battle at the end of Man of Steel is amazing. Amazing. Hey, our own Jack Wallace is here. The Mandalorian figure is the Black series. Jack Wallace is Aiden's dad. That's what he's talking about right here. And of course, the Predator is a generic toy from Walmart. Okay. I knew that Mandalorian was the Black series because it looks great. Well, you tell Aiden. He made my day. And by the way, you, Jack, you made the ladies that live in this house very popular because, man, did those... Like, as soon as Elizabeth took one and put one in her hair and then called Zoe, and those things were gone. I don't even know where they went. Gone. But you made the ladies very happy with those. And with my hair, I was like, well, I bet I could wear one of those. But I got a cup. So thank you so much. And I'm going to get this box out because I need the room. DeRock Media. And by the way, give Aiden my best. Tell him it's always nice to see. I can't wait to see more. He should do a... He should do one of those, like you can have those books printed. When he takes enough pictures, you should do like a coffee table book. Like maybe we could sell it. The Post-Geek Singularity or something. That'd be kind of cool. DeRock Media says, shout out to Joshua Levesque, the moderator. Each time I contribute, Josh has always been the top player. It sickens me, actually. Just kidding. Rock on, Josh. Well, thank you, DeRock. I appreciate your support of the channel, and I'm glad that Mr. Levesque gets the love that he deserves. Magic Case sends in a super chat and says, let's play devil's advocate here. Like you said, Zack's DC film is one take of the superhero genre. Can we say the same thing to modern Star Trek? Sure, you can. I mean, it is. I would say it is, but I would say this. I would say that you can look at Zack Snyder's Justice League and it would be evocative of Injustice, Gods Among Men. Or you could say there's a lot of Alex Ross in his work. Or you could go back to the Death of Superman storyline. You could look at Zack Snyder's Justice League and you could... I see a lot in the source material. I don't know if you could say that about modern Star Trek. I mean, sure, you could say, well, the Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are there. But I do think that at the genetic level, modern Star Trek isn't really Star Trek. I think, as a matter of fact, it's almost just because somebody might give a Star Trek sounding speech. I think my problem with modern Star Trek is they are literally trying to change what Star Trek is at a fundamental level. Whereas I think Zack Snyder's Justice League does not do that. There's enough of the original material, but it's different. But I see what you did there, and you gotta keep me on my toes. I think that's good. I think it's good, Magic K. I just think that It's a different animal. But there's others. I would say this. There are others who are coming to Star Trek for the very first time with the last decade and almost decade and a half of Star Trek. So if those people like Star Trek, it will lead them back into real Star Trek, and they will understand. They will understand. I believe the work speaks for itself. D. Duval 59 says, I think him wearing the classic outfit in the end would have been better, but I'm okay with the black suit. You know what, though? I don't know if he could have. Where would he have gotten that suit from? But maybe he'll go make one later. Ash Challen says, just a thought. A Reign of the Superman saga for the DCEU would be great. Have a Val Zod film with Michael B. Jordan, a Superboy film, a Supergirl film with Sasha Calle, and have them meet in Cavill's Superman in a convergence of worlds in an epic film. Oh man, I'd see that. That would be dope. Ash goes on to say, the black suit was hinted at during the dream sequence in Man of Steel. The suit symbolized Kal-El conquering the world. Superman essentially did that in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but not as Earth's vengeful destroyer, a la Zod, but as Earth's rightful protector. That's a really good point. That is a very good point. I like that, Ash. I think you're absolutely right. I like both of those things. The idea of that kind of an epic film, that'd be amazing. I'd be totally into seeing something like that. Totally. That'd be awesome. But yeah, I think, yes, conquering the world, Superman coming back. I mean, I think that Superman is now finally Superman, after Zack Snyder's Justice League. And again, to be honest, I'm hearing where Zack's ideas were going, like they're going to have to go off-world and go take on Apocalypse. Like, look, man, I mean, if you took these characters out and you go to Apocalypse and New Genesis, or even if you went to Warworld and added Mongol into the mix or something like that, it could be epic. I don't know if I'd want to watch a scenario where the Earth was conquered, the nightmare version. If Batman's nightmare scenario came to be, I don't know if I would dig that too much. I think that'd be going a bit too far, but you never know. Depends again how well it was done. Duroc Media says, I signed up for HBO Max just to watch the Snyder Cut. I respect the fact that they were able to put it together, and in that, they deserve my money. Totally agree. Totally agree with you. And thank you very much for that super chat. I see what you did there. But yes, thank you very much, Duroc. Cardinal Sin says, greetings, RMB, mods, and all the PGS. Hello, Cardinal Sin. I know I was asked to come on a stream. I think you were on. No, it was Cockney Spock, right? I don't remember. Yesterday, I was just if people ask me to go on same day stuff, it's hard for me to do that. So, Professor Spencer in Television Chill. Professor Spencer in Television Chill sent in a super chat. Zack Snyder's Justice League was the best possible version of a redemption arc. So damn satisfying. All that previously wasted potential was restored. Hashtag restore the Snyderverse. I hope we don't have to. I agree, Professor. But I just think, we have to remember here, the Snyder Cut was already shot, and Zack did have his cut. In order to restore the Snyderverse, there's a lot that would have to happen, and a lot of money. I don't think it's ever going to happen. It might. I mean, who knows? Magic K said, would you still be that appreciative if Zack Snyder directed a new Star Trek film with a struggling, edgy Captain Kirk? I don't know, because it would depend. I mean, it would depend how it's approached. I think that the Injustice, Gods and Men universe and those comics exist, so you can point to that and go, okay. But I don't know. I don't think Zack Snyder is necessarily the best person to do Star Trek. But it would depend. It would depend how it was done. I mean, I'd watch it. I'd go, just like I went to see Star Trek 09. Julian Mushkin says, I saw an article that hinted at the possibility that some Star Trek animated alien characters may make their appearance in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Setting aside any story issues, which character would you prefer to see translated to live action? I'd like to see Menace and Eric's. Why not? I think it'd be cool. Because those are the two characters. But I don't know. I don't know if Strange New Worlds is going to be any good. I have no faith in Star Trek. I'll go. I want them to do right. I do. But I don't think Akiva Goldsman's the man for the job. I haven't liked any of his science fiction stuff. I mean, look at Lost in Space, Batman and Robin. I mean, Akiva Goldsman, that guy to me is, yes, he's won the Oscar, but he won the Oscar because he had source material to work from. I don't know if he's the right guy for the job. I don't know. So we shall see. Stub McShave says, one of the reasons I think Clones is the worst prequel movie is that the central story is a love story and Lucas can't direct human interaction very well. Well, they literally talk about their feelings in a stilted way instead of acting on their feelings. I cannot disagree with you. I guess when I think of Attack of the Clones, I'm thinking of the Obi-Wan storyline because I just don't care about Anakin's fall from grace. I thought it was poorly handled from the get. So I think of Attack of the Clones as Kenobi's story. The rest of it, the love story between him and Padme is not good. Pookie Poo sends in a super chat and says, I was being sarcastic. I love prequels. Depends. I was trolling. I wasn't even born when The Phantom Menace came out. I probably should have been more clear. I was just trying to poke fun at OG fans. Oh. Well, I just take it at face value that, look, Phantom Menace was the most disappointing movie for a lot of people. So that's why when I read it, look, I'm the kind of guy that just takes things at face value. At least when people send them in here. Like, I want to believe Bat Boy in the Weekly World News is real. I'm like Fox Mulder. I want to believe. I like that letter. I thought it was good. It's good, Pookie Poo. But thanks for supporting the channel, and thanks for writing in a letter. It was good. Twin Flicks is here and says, I loved Zack Snyder's Justice League the Snyder Cut, and it was great seeing the Flash actually do heroic things instead of being a little whiny wimp afraid of everything and then landing on Wonder Woman's boobs. Snyder knew how to use Flash's strengths very effectively. I thought that too. I thought Flash was acquitted admirably in this. I've liked Ezra Miller's performance, but I like what they did. There's already op-ed pieces about the hot dog scene that I read, so I like that. But you're right, I thought so too. I would like to see more of that. It made me excited to see the Flash movie. Brendan Sheehy sends in a tip and says, Rob, what will become of Justice League 2017 now? Will it be relegated to the footnotes of history as a discussion point whilst becoming an unwatched entity in and of itself, like Love Conquers All, the TV cut of Brazil, or the theatrical version of Blade Runner? No, I think it'll always be around. I think the first thing that's going to happen is someone's going to do the ultimate cut, and they're going to take scenes they actually liked from that version of Justice League and incorporate them into Zack Snyder's version. So it'll all be there. I mean, the conversation will be had. To me, the theatrical version of Blade Runner is what was around for 20 years. So in my mind, I watched the final cut of Blade Runner, and I still hear the narration whether I want to or not. So it's different than that. The Love Conquers All version of Brazil was terrible. It was just terrible. By the way, having a background of film editing myself, the Snyder Cut versus 2017 clearly shows the power of editing and how it affects the quality of the film. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, editing is where a film is finished. So if editing is not good, we are in trouble. Elizabeth is, let me see, Elizabeth sent me a text, and sometimes, Elizabeth says, don't forget to announce whining and pick a really popular movie. Oh, yes, people have been asking us. We're going to do local hero. I don't think we're going to do local hero. Elizabeth wants to do a real popular movie. Well, I think that the only choice that we can make in terms of what movie we have to do for whining about movies is, drum roll please, say it with me now, guess what the triumphant return of whining about movies tomorrow night is going to be, say it with me now, Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's what we're going to be watching tomorrow night, whining about movies. Maybe it'll be a two-banger. We'll have 2 bottles of wine. Elizabeth Gwendolyn Bell, the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence, and the enchantress of entertainment, and I will be discussing Zack Snyder's Justice League. Tomorrow night, join us. The triumphant return of whining about movies. That's what we're doing. I can just see Elizabeth going, no. I'm like, yes. That's what we're going to do. Tomorrow night, Zack Snyder's Justice League on Whining About Movies. The ace will tell you what she thinks. So we're going to watch it. By the way, Elizabeth, I want to watch it again. So we're going to watch it. Yep. Brendan Shee, he says, Rob, one thing amongst many I noticed are the vastly improved special effects in the Snyder Cut. Everything is better lit. Interesting how that can be accomplished in post-production only, and much more polished in general. How do you account for this? Well, they had to go back. Remember, here's one thing. A lot of the companies, I'm sure, that worked on these effects had the assets. They were just never finished. So it wasn't like they started from scratch. And I think that they pretty much knew what they were doing. They probably, before, I would imagine, with the amount of effects that they had to do, once the idea was that people were going to be hired to do it, I bet they started working and pulling the trigger anyway. So I think they probably had it going on before they actually officially were even hired. So, I think that, and again, it wasn't so schizophrenic. You were back to a singular vision. And I think that's what was it. I mean, Zack Snyder was very probably specific about what he wanted, and it wasn't so schizophrenic, and you didn't have effects companies trying to change things. So that's probably it. I mean, you had a very clear vision. Zack already knew. He probably knew exactly what he wanted because he'd been thinking about it for 4 years. He's like, here's what I want. So, Delonzo Edwards sends in a super chat. Thank you, Delonzo. I appreciate it. Totally agree with your take on the geeks and gamers situation with Zack. As someone who hated Batman v Superman, I'm more sympathetic to Zack. I really enjoyed his Justice League. I'm glad you did. Yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic to both sides. I think it was just unfortunate. I think if people just let it happen, I just don't understand why. Look, there's a lot of people when they get angry at you, there's a very vocal contingent that will look at what because I get it all the time. It's hate speech. It's this. It's that. And I'm like, at the end of the day, look, do I agree with how people know? Like, I'm a staunch Kathleen Kennedy defender. Luckily, nobody comes after me but I know people think. I mean, some people do. Some people come after me and go, "How can you lie? I blame Kathleen Kennedy." I'm like, you can't. I work in the industry. Kathleen Kennedy, I have a very different viewpoint. Like, she made moves, hiring Lord and Miller for Solo. She tried to do things that were really unique, tried to hire people of the moment. And these people, what Kathleen Kennedy is used to working with is the very best of the best. That's what she expects. And when people aren't living up to that, they have some responsibility too. Do you think Kathleen Kennedy liked firing Lord and Miller off Solo? It had to be one of the worst things she's ever had to do in her life. She's under enormous pressure. And yet, the hatred that people throw her way I hate it. I hate it. And so, look, I try and look at everything from both sides. I do. Some people accuse me of sitting on the fence, but there are two sides to every story. Actually, there's three sides to every story. There's your side, there's my side, and then there's the truth, which is somewhere in between. And, that's what Robert Evans said. So I think that I'm glad you appreciate that way. And I don't even know what I'm saying now. I'm babbling. Armani Martinez sends in a super chat and says, I love the tease of Shakespeare drama with Apocalypse. I agree. And that's kind of what remember, Apocalypse is all part of Jack Kirby's Fourth World. So you've got the New Gods in addition to Apocalypse. And the whole time I'm like, they're talking about making a New Gods movie. And I'm looking at that going, I know Anna DuVernay is supposed to make a New Gods movie. But I'm thinking to myself, I want to see Zack Snyder bring all of the New Gods to life. Go full on Jack Kirby, Fourth World. So you've got everybody, the Allfather, Orion, Light Ray, the Black Racer. Bring it all. Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. I mean, how great would it be if they go into space and Mr. Miracle gets to join the League and so does Big Barda. Get Gwendolyn Christie to play Big Barda. I mean, I'd love to see them do that. It'd be dope. Bring it on. I think Armani, that'd be the coolest shit ever. Stubble McShave says, great member stream today. Oh, thanks, Stubble. I thought it was good. And shouts out to Roberto Suarez for being a good moderator. I thought that worked really good. Everybody raises their hand. You know, it was like being in Clubhouse except with video. I love that. Thanks for, for members. For those of you who don't know, we have if you're a member of the channel, we have Zoom parties for the certain membership levels where we all get together and I just do a chat with everybody. You can ask me whatever you want. We can see each other now. And it's great. It's an adjunct, and we're going to do regular Zoom parties too for people that aren't necessarily members, but we're going to have a fairly regular Zoom party for members. So that's good. Duroc Media sends in a super chat and says, I literally woke up to a Zoom meeting notification, ran to Best Buy for a Logitech webcam just for your Zoom. I was there and enjoyed listening. I had fun listening to everyone's thoughts, though. Oh, well, Duroc Media, join us next time. I'm glad you got to experience it. That's cool. That's good. I'm glad to have you there because that was great. And you were wearing like a cool shirt. Was it like a Marvel shirt? Was it on? I don't remember. But I noticed you were wearing definitely a comic book related shirt of some kind. Lancelot Narian sends in a tip and says, hey man, no time to speak. Saw Zack Snyder's Justice League today and enjoyed it. I bloody love Affleck as Batman. He has to be my favorite screen version. Would you want to see an Affleck Snyder version of Miller's The Dark Knight Returns? Yeah, in like 25 years. You know what I do want to see? Somebody please, Ben Affleck, please direct the Batman Terminator movie. Please for HBO Max. I want to see that so damn bad. Please. Kaz Graphics, the official cheesemonger of this channel, says, I'm at Beecher's handmade cheese. I'm at Beecher's, package coming soon. I got to tell you. So I didn't know what Beecher's cheese was. It's in Seattle and New York. Apparently, they make Oprah's favorite mac and cheese. Man, do I love... And they have their signature cheese. You can now get them as cheese sticks. It's really, really good. Their mac and cheese is amazing. And Kaz Graphics, the official cheesemonger of this channel, is always sending us Beecher cheese. By the way, they're also supporters of the film festival, which we're going to wrap up, I swear to God. Lancelot Narion says, an Affleck Godot globe-trotting in civilian clothes. Yes. I think that would be a hoot. You know, it's almost like a screwball comedy with Bruce Wayne and Gal Gadot. You know, and of course it could be like a limited series, like a 6-episode series, and they're looking for some big thing going on. We don't know that. And at the end, of course, the last episode, Batman and Wonder Woman are revealed, and they have to go team up and deal with it. So yes, Paul in Long Beach says, I ran into Ed Begley Jr. once in Westwood. I was exiting the Mongolian barbecue place on Gailey. I used to go there all the time. Probably 89. That's when I went there and almost knocked him down. Apologized like crazy. Nice guy. Did it once to Mike Nichols in Manhattan too. Nice, Paul in Long Beach. I used to go to that Mongolian place on Gailey all the time. We loved it. Loved it. Maximus sends in a tip and says, well, Maximus is, of course, the apparently one half of the schizophrenic Claude, i.e. Claudius. Claudius says, Burnett, Post-Geek Singularity, libertines and sweaty people. Sorry to interrupt your Snyder Cut Joyfest. I am busy working on a review of Orson Welles' The Other Side of the Wind. Watching this film and the accompanying documentary reminds me of you. Well, I'll tell you, you got to watch both. If those of you, The Other Side of the Wind was an unfinished film by Orson Welles, which I think Frank Marshall had a hand in completing, I believe. And also there's a great documentary about the making of that film, which is pretty incredible. It's on Netflix. You got to check it out. I don't think The Other Side of the Wind is a great movie, but it's certainly worth watching. So check that out. Arvid sends in a tip and says, you're a neat guy. Well, thank you, Arvid. I appreciate that. I hope I'm a neat guy. I like being called neat. I'm not like neat as in tidy, but I like to be neat as in like, oh, neato. in that kind of a way. So I hope that's what you meant. Because if you said I was a neat guy, Elizabeth would probably come on and go, no, he's not. But thank you, Arvid. I appreciate that. Steve Foley sends in a super chat and says, hey, Rob, I'm a lifelong sweaty too, but you're right. Let that phrase be with the king. I hope you're having as an amazing day as I am. I am. Live long and prosper. Well, Steve, you and I, by the way, I love your little Avi there. I love the insert to the 45 single. I had many of those little yellow plastic doohickeys in my life. I first had them in my Power Records 45s. But yes, I thank you for that. I'm having an amazing day. Every day is amazing, right? I think so. Psycho-sexy Throg Legs is here. Throg is here. Has Claudius or Maximus been here today? Seems like it's been quite my Snyder Cut review. It wasn't metal enough. In the comics, the black suit helped bring Superman back by recharging his cells. That was the explanation, if I remember correctly. Well, I think that was part of it. I think it probably helped him. But yeah. Yep. So yeah, there you go. Armani Martinez, Throg. By the way, Throg, I got to hand it to Throg. If it wasn't for Throg is always donating. He is the Steelbook connection, the Best Buy Steelbooks that I cannot get. Throg hooks me up with. And I want to thank Throg for being that kind of guy. Armani Martinez sends in a super chat and says, so DC beat Marvel on a real multiverse name drop. I guess they did. They actually said multiverse. So, yes, you're right about that. Absolutely. Steve Foley says, also, brother, that Frederick Douglass sticker is badass. I have this man on my wall, too. I got to say, this sticker came from Throg. Throg sent me a box full of goodness. T-shirts, hand sanitizer, and there were these cool vinyl stickers. And I love Frederick Douglass, and I just love, to me, this image of Frederick Douglass is also like there's Einstein, of which Einstein also came, but Einstein and Frederick Douglass to me are two of the most iconic of these images. Like I always see them kind of in my mind together, but I love Frederick Douglass, and it was Black History Month, so I was like, I'm putting Frederick Douglass. I had my I voted sticker there, and I put Frederick Douglass is an amazing American, an amazing statesman, and an orator. He was par excellence. So he was amazing. So yes, Frederick Douglass, thank you to Throg for even that. Brendan Sheehy says, Rob, did you think the character of Steppenwolf improved much in the Snyder Cut? He looked much better and a more interesting background that made him a bit of a pathetic character in some ways. I always also want more love for Irish actor Ciarán Hinds. I loved him. I thought there was pathos. Like Steppenwolf, you kind of felt bad for the guy, and the poor dude did not. Well, you know what? I liked his armor. I like what he's trying. He was only doing his job. I know it's something. That's what the Nazis would say, right? But Steppenwolf was in the service of. He wanted to curry favor with his old boss. He was kind of a schleprock. Now I felt bad for the guy. I wanted him to triumph. Of course, I wanted the Justice League to triumph more, but I thought that was one of the great things about the Snyder Cut is Steppenwolf becomes more of a deal. I like that. Maximus says, Burnett, I knew Pookie Poo's letter was sarcastic. He said he didn't like prequel Jedi because he was used to old men swinging broomsticks in A New Hope. Come on, Rob. The prequels are the best Star Wars while being the worst cinema. Hashtag Natalie Portman midriff. I'm here for this new alter ego of yours. Yes, I didn't know. I mean, I'm reading it thinking, because I guess I'm so used to the Phantom Menace hatred that I just went with it. I went with it. I'm earnest. I just believe I take people at face value for the most part. I try. By the way, I got a great letter I'm reading tomorrow from Maximus. It's ongoing. It's part of a new routine. I like it. I'm all for it. Eric G sends in a tip and says, greetings, Rob. I just watched the Snyder Cut and I'm wondering, why didn't the producers just polish up Snyder's footage and release it as 2 films? It's almost like they spent extra money and took on extra work to screw the thing up. What the fuck? Look, I think the real problem was they thought that Zack Snyder's approach, and Zack Snyder himself said this, his approach to the material wasn't working. That's what they thought. And that the decision was made. It wasn't that they wanted that approach gone. They thought it wasn't working. They wanted him gone. And the tragedy in Zack Snyder's life gave them the opportunity. They were probably hammering him. And like Zack Snyder's pretty much said in all the interviews you can read, on all the interviews I've covered on this channel, they wanted him gone. So that his approach was what they didn't like. And they thought that, and they you know what? I think it's apparent now. Like, if I were them, I would have looked down and I would have said, okay, it was a Lord of the Rings-esque movie. If he could have got it down to 3 hours or something, he probably could have. I think it would have been better. And I think they just didn't like his approach, or in fact, release it as 2 movies. Yeah, I agree. I think so. And they screwed it up. Nathan Trujillo sends in a super chat. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate that. Brian Sutter sends in a super chat and says, no matter how hard I try, I can never sit through TNG's masks. I have to tell you, when I was working on the Blu-rays for Next Gen, Masks and Sub Rosa, 2 wonderful episodes from the 7th season, they looked so good on Blu-ray compared to what they used to look like that I thoroughly enjoyed watching them. I mean, Masks is insane, but you got to hand it to Brent Spiner, man. He tried. Masks is bad. I think episodes I hate of TNG, I hate Home Soil. I hate Night Terrors. What else do I hate? I don't like... look, Sub Rosa and Masks I've made my peace with, but they're not good. I mean, I could make fun of Justice, but it's a first season episode, so why bother? Or Angel One, but I think I think the worst episode of the first season is Home Soil by far. But yeah, I Night Terrors I really can't stand. So there you go. Jeff Yerke, who I just saw, Jeff Yerke says, hey, Rob, thanks for the super Zoom today. It was awesome. 1 more hour of Zack Snyder's Justice League to go tonight. By the way, just saw that our local Cineplex is reopening on March 31st. Colored me happy. Live long and prosper, the Yerk man. Well, it's good to see you, Jeff. Always a pleasure. That was a lot of fun. I like interacting in real time with everybody. Stubble McShave says, would you say that Kaz Graphics is part of Rob's official cheese board? Yes, he is absolutely part of the official cheese board. Paul Revere sends in a super chat and says, Superman's black suit is a healing suit because its color absorbs more energy from the sun than any other. He needed to recharge his batteries. Yeah, I mean, that could very well be. I don't think necessarily. I mean, you know what? Maybe. Because clearly Superman had to go, like when he was revived, maybe the ship gave that suit to him. Or something, and maybe that's what it was. That makes sense. That makes sense. I'll buy that. Yeah, or he knew by then. Kind of snapped out of it and went and got that suit. Duroc Media says, indeed, I have on an 80s retro-themed looking Marvel hoodie that I just bought at Target. Reminds me of a space galaxy. It's rad. I thought it was rad, too. I hope to talk to you soon. Well, Duroc Media, you will. You will talk to me soon. You will be. I thought it would look cool, too. Delonzo Edwards sends in a super chat and says, seeing how healthy Ben Affleck looked in that final scene with the Martian Manhunter really touched me. His issues during this movie are known. His return to health was a redemption story in itself. You know what, Delonzo? I feel the same way you did. I thought Ben Affleck looked terrific in the end scene of the movie. He looked great. And I think really at the end of the day, Ben Affleck was kind of the heart and soul of Justice League, in addition to Ray Fisher. And I thought he was great. I thought he looked great. I'm a huge fan of Ben Affleck. I want to see him direct his 5th feature, which he's going to do. I can't wait to see it. But I really do want to see that Batman Terminator movie. Bring that on, son, please. Harry Nice Guy sends in a super chat and says, how often do you intend to rewatch Zack Snyder's Justice League? 26 times or even more, laugh out loud. I haven't seen it yet, but looking forward to doing so. Rotten Tomatoes seems to like it too. You know what? I mean, I'll watch Zack Snyder's Justice League a few more times. I have to say, I really liked catching up, watching Man of Steel, and then Batman v Superman, and then Justice League. I think they work really well together as a piece. And knowing the roots of the Nightmare scene, it was interesting. Like, I'd like to know, like, I know they filmed Mara, and I know they filmed, I want to know, because it looked like Ezra Miller's Flash, that he looks like he looks in the Nightmare scene in Batman v Superman. So I don't think the whole thing was new, was it? I don't know. I don't think I'm going to watch it 26 times, but certainly going to buy it. Maximus sends in a tip and says, "Number 1, Burnett, I am Maximus Aurelius American. Number 2, Claudius is a jag-driving French sailboat-having libertard pansy. 3, Peter Bogdanovich and Frank Marshall acquired the rights and helped to direct the completion of The Other Side of the Wind." That's right. I was thinking, Frank, that's right, they did. So, remember, Frank Marshall is married to Kathleen Kennedy. So they do good work. And yes, I forgot to say Peter Bogdanovich, who was, of course, a very good friend of Orson Welles' for a long time. Armand, you're funny, Maximus. What happened to Claudius? I mean, Claudius is a jag-driving French sailboat having lib pansy. Love it. What's it like being in your head now, man? Armani Martinez sends in a super chart and says, "Zack gave us the anti-life equation name drop and made it that Darkseid was Steppenwolf's nephew. This has to end the debate that Zack doesn't get DC. Plus, whoosh, how about that? Underwater, how cool is that? Yeah, I mean, the anti-life equation, all that. All that stuff. I was so for all that. It was so much fun as a lifetime DC fan. It was so cool. So cool. Brendan Sheehy says, "Rob, I think you give too much credit to Enterprise. It killed the franchise and it allowed vultures like Bad Robot to feed on the carcass. It didn't feel fresh and was a copy of many copies. Goofy CGI and dull characters sealed the deal for me." Look, I don't necessarily think you're wrong, but I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff in Enterprise. Also had the most meddling from the network. So remember, the first season of Enterprise was going to be all set on Earth, which I would have loved to have seen. But there's some good episodes of Enterprise, especially in the 4th season. Co-Genitor is one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek yet. But I understand where you're coming from. I don't think it totally killed the franchise because the ratings nowadays would be huge, comparatively speaking. But yes, I mean, I think it needed new blood. And look, the Eric Jedrinson script that was written after Enterprise that would have been canonical Star Trek would have put a luster back on the franchise if the regime at Paramount wasn't taken down. I think that would have gotten made. It would have been great. I still think, look, I would love to take that Eric Jedrinson script. It needs a rewrite and do his trilogy, the Romulan War trilogy. I think it'd be great. And I think it would be exactly what Star Trek needs. And it would be canonical. It would be canonical. Throggable Huggable sends, "Claudius Maximus has more personalities than you know. And we know works for the government. Love you, Claude, but it's time for one of you to win. I'm rooting for you, Claudius. Sending hugs." Oh, no. Joseph Ryder, is it Ryder? Says, "What is your favorite everyday cheese and what is a rare, underrated cheese that you could recommend?" You know what I have to say? Trader Joe's has, what is it, an unexpected cheddar that's got a little parm in it. That's my favorite everyday cheese. The Trader Joe's unexpected cheddar. You know what? If you could dry that out and chop it up, I'd snort rails of that, I mean, I would put rails of that on the back of Margot Robbie, if you know what I'm saying, a la Wolf of Wall Street style, and suck that up. So that's my probably. And what is a rare, underrated cheese you could recommend? Gosh, I don't know what I don't know. I am not a cheese connoisseur. I don't know enough. I will say this. I will say that if you go and you get the Beecher's, I think they're selling them at Trader Joe's now. The Beecher's, their signature cheese, they put them in cheese sticks that they're selling at Trader Joe's. Those are that's an amazing cheese. That Beecher's handmade cheese, their signature cheese is great. But Yeah, Elizabeth knows way more about cheeses than I do because she's French. So I am not one. I am not a cheese. I'm a cheese connoisseur in the sense that I love cheese, but I need to know about cheese. I don't know about cheese. But that Trader Joe's unexpected cheddar. But I do like cheddars, all kinds. I like sharp cheddar, all kinds of things like that. Throg says, dude, I just went downstairs and Lady Throg is watching Zack Snyder's Justice League without me. What the hell, RMB? Hey, man, she's your wife, dude. I mean, clearly you do not have the kind of relationship that you should be having because, a wife should be going to you and saying, Throg, Zack Snyder's Justice League, shall we? And then take your hand and lead you down into the room to watch Zack Snyder's Justice League. You tell her from me I'm disappointed in her. You tell her. I'm disappointed. Duroc Media goes on and says, just listening to the Zoom is a privilege for me. No, it's a privilege to have you, my man. Hope I can chat with you like I did with Schnepp back when he came to Sacramento, my town. Much love to you and the community. Literally the best. Well, Duroc Media, I'm glad. I didn't know you lived in Sacramento. I would have told you to go to the Sacramento International Jewish Film Festival where you could watch Tango Shalom, the movie I edited and produced. Maybe it's still there. I don't know. You can watch it online. Nalon Surik says, my favorite scene in Tenet was seeing the protagonist throw up when inverted. The violent suctioning of chicken noodle soup entering back into his mouth and gulping it down was the most thrilling thing ever. Well, Nalon, I'm glad you feel that way. Could be thrilling. Could be thrilling. Well, listen, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls, however you identify across these 28 known galaxies, I'm going to bring this episode number 648, to an end. 648 comes to an end. Hang on. Nathan Trujillo says, here's an idea for whining about movies. Take a drink for every slow-mo scene. That's funny. I could see us doing that. But anyway, I want to thank you for what a fun chat this has been. I want to thank everybody for being here. Elizabeth and I, the Ace and I, will be returning tomorrow with our review, whining about movies, Zack Snyder's Justice League. By the way, our review is not going to take 4 hours, but we're going to do it. We're going to have fun. So bring your glasses of wine. That's tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Whining about movies. We're bringing it back. We're going to go on more of a regular schedule. My God, doesn't everybody miss the Ace? I know I miss the Ace because I like sitting next to her and talking to her about these kinds of things. And she always looks so cute. So totes adorbs when she does the show. So whining about movies will be back tomorrow, 7:30 Pacific time. And we will be doing Zack Snyder's Justice League. Claudia sends in a tip and says, Trader Joe's has an awesome tapas trio sampler with Iberico, Cabra al Vino, and Manchego. Note, Maximus is another awful person like the Colbert Report Stephen Colbert. Colbert is another person. The Colbert Report. No. That's what you say, Claudius. I don't know. I mean, Maximus, I don't know what to tell you. But on that note, everyone, I want to thank my moderating staff, beginning with Mike Bodden and the Richard. I want to thank Greg Smith for being here, Joshua Levesque being here, Brian Hepburn's here, Darren Seeley is here. Who else is here? Is Louise X here? I think she is. She was here. Bunyan Snipe is here. And we have a full group. Thank you for all being here. And again, we'll probably be having bi-weekly Zoom chats for members, which will be fun, and all of that. So on that note, remember, whining about movies tomorrow night, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Oh, yeah. And on that note, I will say, remember, everyone you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day.